Hello friends, and welcome back once again to another episode of Player's Companion. As always, I am Dustin.
I'm Haley.
And this week we are here to talk about our newest obsession. Everyone's newest
obsession
is Baldurs Gate 3 from Larian Studios, the video game. We're not going to just talk about the video game or how addictive it is or how much we enjoy playing it and how many hours of our life we've lost to it in the last couple of weeks, but rather inspiration from the game or the things the game might inspire you to seek out. After all, the game's origins are in Dungeons & Dragons. It takes its rules exclusively and in most cases literally from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition with a few tweaks to change it around for the digital format. And we were thinking, well, a lot of new people who just like video games a lot are probably playing this for the first time and when to seek out. Maybe Dungeons & Dragons, but also maybe other gaming experiences as well that might be related. So our thought was, let's introduce 5 games that if you like Baldurs Gate 3, you might like these tabletop experiences for one reason or another. So some of them are D&D related exclusively, specifically. Some of them are not, but all of them have an element we think you might appreciate as it has some sort of similarity or some facet that we think it shares with Baldurs Gate 3. Our first game is Dungeons & Dragons related, just like Baldurs Gate 3 obviously. Draws its inspiration from that, and so I figured if you like the combat system in Baldur's Gate, the combat most closely translates from the D&D role-playing game to the board game Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught by our friends over at WizKids. So there are a lot of D&D games out in the world, but most of them don't really emulate like the fighting. They're more about like the Dungeons and Dragons world or art or known creatures, but are more of like a deck building experience.
Or dungeon crawling.
So many other ones take another D&D mechanic or just another game mechanic and slap D&D onto it. With Onslaught, they tried very, very closely to emulate the D&D combat engine. So in this one, you have a grid map. You have teams of usually 5 characters assigned to each player, and you can build those out of any combination of classes. They aren't all divided in quite the same way. There are rangers, fighters, wizards, etc., but they are divided more into like striker, tank, protector, and so you build a balanced squad of 5, and then there's a series of scenarios you can play throughout here, or you can just battle one another on the map and see who wins. The game is highlighted by having some amazing looking, fully painted D&D miniatures, which are scaled to work either here in the game or in your Dungeons & Dragons tabletop game with the other minis and stuff that have been released for that.
Yeah, this one's great if D&D doesn't appeal to you as much for like the character part and you're more interested in just getting in there and fighting. You're more of a 4th ed person because this is just a battle game. You're just fighting and you have a little bit of flavor with your characters, but it doesn't really matter because you're just fighting each other.
Yeah, and there's some missions, some scenarios to play through, but no story stuff, no downtime. It is, if you like combat, each character has their own card, and the card itself has like the stats of the character, their hit points built into it, and those are represented by wheels on the card, which will turn and rotate. So as they take damage, their stats might go up or down a little bit. The cards also have built-in cooldown timers, which would be like for your resting period when spell slots will refill themselves. The spells, the items you pick up, everything are inspired directly by Dungeons & Dragons feats and spells taken from the core rulebooks. Honestly, like really even the action structure where you have a base action, free actions, and a bonus action. Those are all kind of weighted into it and really kind of feel very much like taking an expression of the D&D RPG and its combat and laying it down on the table. So really close in that regard. One great advantage is if you are familiar with D&D combat, even if it's just from playing Baldur's Gate, pretty easy to pick up because most of the core rules are there and the visuals laid out in front of you are pretty easy to follow. I think you should have a pretty easy time of picking everything up and just grabbing the game, jumping into it, and being fairly familiar with everything. If you like the combat in Baldur's Gate, definitely worth checking out.
Next up, we have a household favorite in our house is Star Wars Outer Rim. So this one, you're playing more like scoundrels, kind of like morally gray characters, like not necessarily the villains, but the ones that are out doing questionable things to make a living, basically. So your Han Solos, your Boba Fett's,
Jyn Erso, Dr. Afro.
Love her. So in this one, obviously we are on the outer rim of the galaxy, the Star Wars galaxy, and you're traveling from planet to planet. You're trying to collect bounties, gain favors with some of the factions like the Hutts or the Rebels. So there's a lot of moving parts. You're going back and forth between all the planets. You're getting upgrades to your ships. You can switch your ships around and get all kinds of like tech.
I wanted to recommend this game for those of you who like the exploration of Baldur's Gate, because as Haley was listing off the ways you can get points, that's one of the great things about this game is that it's like super open-ended.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want, whatever you're more comfortable with the way to win, because there's a lot of different ways to just earn points. And as far as like the exploration, every planet has some characters and they're a secret and you can like get a bounty on them. So that's part of the exploration, is that like you don't know who you're gonna find at each planet. So sometimes you'll have a bounty card and you'll need a specific person, but you don't know where they are. So you gotta like turn over the characters at different locations. And then there's encounter cards, and they're different, and they give you different things depending on which planets you go to as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can potentially discover.
Right. So the ultimate goal is just whatever you're going to do is just to get like 10 points, which are fame points. Basically, you're just trying to be the best scoundrel or mercenary, whatever you want to be in the galaxy. So however you get those points, 10 points get you the game.
Yeah.
And all the things that Haley was listing off are ways to get them: bounty hunting, smuggling, upgrading your ship. But some characters are better than others. Obviously, Han Solo is a better smuggler. Boba Fett's a better bounty hunter.
Yeah.
But any character can get there in any combination of ways.
Yeah, I think the characters are pretty well balanced in this game too.
Mm-hmm. And also, as Haley was saying, the planets have encounter cards, and I really like that they feel so varied and random. So again, that's what kind of goes in with the Baldur's Gate exploration theme, is the idea that you never know exactly what you're going to encounter.
Yeah.
And every game's going to be a little bit different, and every game gives you a lot of different choices in order to decide how you're going to accomplish your missions, how you're going to meet each of these encounters that comes up. So it could be with violence, it could be with stealth, but the option is yours, and you can win anyway, no matter how you play, hero or villain. The option's there.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite games that we play because it feels different every time you play it. It's not one that gets kind of stale because you're like, okay, I've done this before. Like, it feels fresh, especially now that they have so many different character options.
Yeah, they put an expansion out last year that added in like Cad Bane and this Nest, and you can play as Chewbacca rather than just having them as a co-pilot. So there's a lot of different playable builds that work. Plus they added in more of like a story track in that expansion, so you can play like through your character's backstory, and you don't win unless you get the points and have completed their backstory at the same time. So that adds a little more narrative.
Like Baldur's Gate as well.
Yeah, exactly. One other note here too, I actually like this one a lot. I think we probably mentioned it before because it is a favorite, like you said. Another game that maybe even fits even more so the feel like Baldur's Gate, and has almost the exact same mechanics. It may even have been the inspiration for the design of this game, is Great Western Trail, which is the same kind of thing, but with obviously the title Cowboys.
Yeah.
So same kind of idea where it's just the open west, and in that one you can explore, gunfight, play poker, drive cattle, roll as your oyster for just open exploration, player choice, and crazy random encounters all over the place. So if the Star Wars theme isn't your jam necessarily, Great Western Trail is a great alternative for this one as well. So our third game recommendation is one for those of you who enjoyed stepping into Baldur's Gate and the world of the Sword Coast of Faerun and just Dungeons and Dragons in general, but maybe are more familiar with just board gaming and want a nice entryway into more adventures within the world itself, but still in a familiar game type mechanic. Or also, honestly, if you just already know you like the D&D world, are looking to get into board games, it's a good entry gateway for that as well. Lords of Waterdeep is a great entryway game, either direction, honestly. So this game, I was shocked and I was just kind of like looking at the details in the back of this box a moment ago and realized this game is 11 years old now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, honestly, it still feels pretty fresh out there. I know a lot of people still enjoy and recommend this game.
This game gets recommended a lot. A lot of you watching have probably heard people talk about it if you haven't played it yourself. And it's definitely, it lives up to the hype. It really does. Like, when I first played it, I was skeptical because I was like, surely it's not as good as everybody's saying. And I was like, oh, actually, it is. And we played it with a friend who knows nothing about D&D, doesn't really care about it, and she liked it too. So you can get more into the details, but the main mechanic of the game is it's a worker placement game. That's the only worker placement game we have on this list. I'm a huge fan of worker placement games. I think that's also what makes this a really good introduction into the board game world. If you're coming from the video game or from D&D and you don't really play board games, I think worker placement is a great way to get you into it. That's kind of how I started, was through worker placement. It's remained one of my favorite gaming types.
And the truth for a lot of folks, it's a big genre of games out there. So this one basically, if you just like the world of Dungeons & Dragons, utilizes a lot of the lore and the creatures and just the ideas and puts them into a nice, crunchy board game setting that goes beyond combat and honestly even just beyond like dungeon crawling exploration.
Politics.
Exactly. So again, it really gets into the deeper lore of D&D that people don't always realize is there. It's not just killing monsters. There's a lot of story elements going on in there, as there should be after 40 some years of development.
Yeah.
So this game sets you as one of the masked lords of the city of Waterdeep, which is where Gale is from. Here in this city, it's ruled by a political group. Again, the masked lords, they are all secret. They meet each other fully masked so that no member can be exposed to the public and bribed or bought out. The only leader that you know is the open lord. There's one face of leadership and everyone else makes their decisions in secret. So you are those secret masters of the city and you're hiring other adventurers to go on quests for you in order to become the most powerful and influential of the open lords. So gameplay goes for 8 rounds with up to 5 players, both building the city up, because there are a lot of blank spaces on the map. You'll buy buildings and lay them out. Those give you more different options every round, places to send your adventurers. Adventurers will go at places to earn coin, recruit other people. You can play like kind of Machiavellian skullduggery cards against each other. And ultimately, your goal will be to fulfill quests. The quests will come out as the city needs either different villains met, items discovered, or monsters vanquished, and you'll send your adventurers you've recruited out on those. Those quests can be themed around skullduggery, warfare, piety, commerce, different themes like that. And you'll need different combinations of rogues, fighters, clerics, etc. in order to meet the challenges of those quests and earn you victory points. At the end of the 8 rounds, whoever has the most victory points built up ends up becoming the most powerful masked lord and gains control of a large part of the city of Waterdeep. So anyway, as Haley was saying, this has got a nice reputation as a good gateway game for worker placement games. It's not super complex. It's got complexity to it. There's definitely a lot of things you can do, and by the end of the game, the way the city expands as you put more buildings in will give a lot of different play options and a lot of different things, a lot of ways the game can develop. So there's really a lot of choice and a lot of things going on in it, but I don't think it's super overwhelming as far as other games of this type go.
It's complex, but it's straightforward. It's really easy to understand.
So, and overall, I mean, it's got just solid mechanics. It's just a good, decent game. But also, again, it captures a lot of the flavor of the D&D world, exploring through mystery and tragedy and combat, a little mixture of everything. So if you just like to know more about Faerun and the Sword Coast, this is a great place to look.
Next, we have The Legacy of Dragonholt. Please excuse our horrible copy. It was on sale.
It's seen better days, that's true.
So this is the closest to D&D, the D&D role-playing feel that you would get without actually being D&D, and it's easier. So this is a DM-less role-playing game. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. Like, even the story is just, you're an adventurer. It's like a choose your own adventure. So you'll read the story, there's a storybook, and you'll make different choices as you go along. I believe it suggests different things for whatever like class or skills you have, and you fill out the character sheet like you would in normal role-playing games, so you have things to reference and motivations for your character as you continue to go on.
It incorporates a lot of the aspects of role-playing that you would enjoy, or in this case we chose it because it represents the narrative choice. If you like a lot of the narrative choices that you make in Baldur's Gate, they're there. And
yeah, it is. It's very much like choosing each thing that you say, because it's like a choose your adventure. There's a couple different options. You choose it and then go to the next one.
Right, and it simulates a role-playing game without a DM in that as you make your choices, depending on the choices you make. Now, the game has like, oh my gosh, thousands of choice like branches throughout the story, and all of them are just numbered. So as you make your choice, you'll read, you can just hear the narrator's voice in your head, her comic voice, reading the chapter, the section of that narrative, and then it'll offer you a few narrative branching pathways to go. You'll choose your number and go to that section of the book. Depending on what you chose, it will give you sometimes rewards like experience points and things that you can use to level up your character. The leveling, again, because there's no dice or anything really, but certain choices open up to you if you have characters that have certain skill levels, and you point out certain classes and races. I think that reminds me a lot of, again, like if you're playing in Baldur's Gate, and sometimes you'll have dialogue options and things that are open to specifically your class or race. Rogues and bards can be a little more charismatic and persuasive, whereas if you're playing as a Githyanki, you'll just want to try to kill everything that ever confronts you and makes you mad at all. You get more aggressive options. So this one likewise has a few D&D-ish race choices and class choices. And it does play through some interesting kind of story elements, like it has a map and you're questing through a lot of different zones and building yourself up in town as you go through, like, I think it's 5 or 6 different chapters that you go through, different like story arcs. Just, make your choices and read your way through the story and see what end you're going to get to. It's one of the easiest games you can find, but it's surprisingly like addictive and interesting. You'll want to play through, maybe even go a couple times to get different like choice paths. So yeah, I think if you want to just play through a story, a narrative where you still have a lot of choice, but don't want to get into the crunchiness sometimes, it'd be a good look up.
Another thing that's really good about it is that we can play it together. We don't have to worry about, only one of us can DM and only one of us can play if just the two of us want to play. Like, we've done that before, it's kind of hard. Like, you had to build another character to travel with me, and we weren't able to like play off of each other as well because you're DMing as well. So in here, we can just both play and we don't have to worry about someone DMing and kind of having an odd dynamic between just two people.
Yeah, it's one that can be played, it's 1 to 4 players. So if you just wanted to sit and read through an adventure and play through on your own, that's great. But yeah, we could just pass the book back and forth and alternate making choices or collaborate if we weren't sure which pathway we wanted to take, and work through the game together that way. So it can become a shared narrative kind of group experience that way too, which is always really nice. So our final game on the list is our only tabletop role-playing game experience. These are all tabletop games, but they mostly go board games. It's supposed to be we haven't really covered a lot of board games. They've been very role-playing heavy lately, but we got to dip our toes back into role-playing a little bit because this is such a unique experience, a unique game, but it ties in perfectly to Baldur's Gate 3. There is no question that a big part of what made Baldur's Gate popular, or the mega hit that it was, on top of being a good game, but the marketing was so successful because of all of the sexuality in the game. I think that the moment that they showed Astarion getting it on with a bear in that convention footage.
They already had seen the footage of Vindara and the tiefling at that point.
Well, that's true. That was me. And when I saw it, I was like, no, this is something a fan made. There's no way they're actually putting this. I mean, Wizards has been trying to make D&D so much more of a family brand, and then here comes Baldur's Gate 3 out of the gate. Everyone's naked, just from the beginning. So if you are attracted to this beautiful, like, pansexual cacophony of D&D characters, then this one might be for you. Thirsty Sword Lesbians. This was released in 2021, so it's very new as far as most games on the market are considered. And it stands out aside from being very like queer coded across all of its mechanics, even down to like your class choices and everything, and obviously marketed as such to the like LGBTQ community and everything, but it hard bakes that into its other mechanics so that you are not just playing to go out and loot gold or fight monsters or whatever, but a large part of the game is based around you finding love and romance and maybe some sex involved as well through the course of the game. Your stats are less based around like your physical strength or constitution. Everything is much more about your grace and your wit and your charm and how you use that in order to interact with the other characters and NPCs and everything around the table.
So I love that all of the classes are different, even the ones that are similar to what we already have still have like fun, different kinds of names and stuff. So like instead of a rogue, you have a scoundrel. And there's a lot more classes in this as well, like the devoted instead of a cleric. So I like that it just automatically feels different even just in that. But yeah, I like that the stats are different. You have daring, grace, heart, wit, spirit. So it just feels very, very fresh, unlike, you know, the same dexterity, wisdom, intelligence that we've had for decades. It's something very, very different and fun for a nice change of pace. You have the spooky witch is one of the classes, which I would probably choose.
So this game mechanically focuses more around moves in turn order rather than say actions being based on like solely dice mechanics. You make power moves, romantic moves. So your actions are based much more on, okay, there is an action move, but there's also stats for romance, for persuasion, you know, or whatever you want to do for your wit moves. Those things in order to make the game have more mechanical stats and actions you can take. Specifically for the romance side, you also get threads, which are emotional attachments that you make with other NPCs or even player characters, which can be positive, such as just platonic friendship, romance, a crush, or they could also be like blackmail that you hold over someone if you're playing one more evil character or something like that, that you use to kind of emotionally manipulate an NPC into following your will.
So obviously I think because romance is a more sensitive subject, I think it's really important that this game you play with people that you're very comfortable with. And this game heavily emphasizes safety, making sure everybody feels safe, checking in with each other throughout the game and before you play so that everybody's on the same page. And it's also very inclusive.
And this is the only game that's really out there that if you loved the fact, and I think pretty much everyone did, loved not only the romance angle of Baldur's Gate 3, because romance is in a lot of video games, but just like how unusually heavy it got, forming the relationships and any character that you wanted to be in a relationship with, you could be, and also take it to a physical level. Not everyone was well liked by Astera. We'll just say.
I'm still trying, it's fine.
Some of us have had many relationships in Baldur's Gate 3.
I could have, but I only have eyes for one person.
So Will's This has made a lot of waves since it was on Kickstarter. It did very well on there. It's done very well since it came out in stores.
It won the 2021 Nebula Award for Best Game Writing as well.
It's one of a kind, and again, if it's something, if you like that aspect of Baldur's Gate a lot, this is to feel like home. All right, so there is our list of 5 tabletop game experiences. If you like Baldur's Gate 3, give those a shot. Each one of them has a different experience to offer, a different part of that overall D&D feel or Baldur's Gate 3 specific feel that you can find yourself attached to. And I think any of them will be a good gateway to hop over from video games over into the tabletop realm.
I agree.
Thank you all for joining us again. As always, please feel free to leave some comments down below. We'd love to hear from you.
Let us know if there's any games that make you think of Baldur's Gate 3 as well.
Yeah, if you've had any experiences with the ones we suggested, please let us know your thoughts on them.
If you've romanced Astarion, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, who did you end up romancing? Tell us all about your romantic experiences.
Yeah, don't don't go off your list or leave here forever.
Whose heart did you break? You know, let us know. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Those help us grow. We do appreciate it.
And if you made it to the end of the video, please leave the gaming controller emoji.
As always, till next time, keep gaming.